Hello everyone. Have you ever found yourself in that in-between space with a woman where you're giving her your time, your attention, maybe even little pieces of your heart, but you're not quite sure if she's genuinely interested or if you're just another name in her phone she replies to when she's bored? It's a subtle kind of limbo. You're not entirely in, you're not entirely out, and that uncertainty eats at you more than a straight no ever could. Maybe she sends you a sweet message at midnight, but cancels plans the next morning. Maybe she laughs at your jokes, but always keeps her phone face down on the table when you're together. Maybe she says, "I love spending time with you," but her actions tell a different story. And here's the truth most men won't admit to themselves. We don't just crave clarity because it saves us time. We crave it because it protects our dignity. Every hour spent in that uncertainty chips away at something deeper than patience. It erodes your ability to trust your own instincts. So today we're going to strip away the guesswork. I want to show you not only how to read the signs, but how to step back into your own power, where you stop chasing answers from her and start creating them for yourself. Because once you can tell the difference between real interest and a polite distraction, you won't just save time, you'll save pieces of yourself you didn't even realize you were giving away. When you've lived long enough, loved enough, and lost enough, you start to realize that time isn't the most valuable currency in a relationship. It's energy. The energy you give when you text her first. The energy you spend replaying the last conversation, wondering if you said something wrong. The energy you pour into plans only to have them dissolve into a casual, "Sorry, something came up." We often think the biggest heartbreak comes from the end of a relationship, but for many men, the real ache comes from the maybe. From being kept in that soft purgatory where she gives you just enough to keep you close, but never enough to let you in. You see, women rarely waste a man's time out of cruelty. Most of the time, they're undecided, and indecision is a breeding ground for mixed signals. She might genuinely like you, but not enough to prioritize you, and that's the first truth you need to hear. If she's truly interested, you will never be confused about where you stand. When a woman wants you, her energy toward you is consistent. It doesn't disappear for days and reappear when she's lonely. She doesn't respond to your messages like she's doing you a favor. She leans in, she invests, you feel her presence even when she's not physically there. Contrast that with the woman who likes the idea of you, the attention, the ego boost, the safety net, but not you. Her texts are sporadic. She's warm when she's bored, distant when she's occupied. And you start justifying it. She's busy, you tell yourself. She's got a lot going on. But here's the hard truth. Being busy is never the real reason someone doesn't make time for you. Think about it. Every single one of us has been busy, truly, overwhelmingly busy. And yet when we deeply wanted someone, we found a way. We stole 5 minutes for a message. We rearranged schedules. We made it known you matter to me. If she isn't doing that, she's not prioritizing you. And that's where many men lose their footing. They start lowering their standards to match her level of effort. She becomes the pace setter for the relationship, and you begin to accept crumbs as if they're a feast. But interest isn't measured by what she says when you ask. It's measured by what she does when you don't. So if you find yourself chasing more than you're receiving, pause, pull back, create space. Not as a game, not as punishment, but as a way to see if she steps forward when you stop leaning in. Because sometimes the only way to know if someone's holding on to you is to stop holding on to them. And here's where it gets uncomfortable, because the moment you step back, you might discover she doesn't follow. And that stings, because it confirms something you've been trying not to see. But in that moment, you've also given yourself the gift of clarity. You've freed your energy to invest in someone who doesn't just respond but reciprocates. There's a kind of interest that isn't really about you. It's about what you represent. Maybe you're the safe place she lands when her life feels chaotic. Maybe you're the late-night distraction when she's restless. Maybe you're the man who reminds her she's still desirable without her having to give anything in return. It's easy to confuse this with genuine attraction because it feels good in the moment. She lights up when you walk into the room. She laughs at your stories. She sends you pictures from her day, sometimes ones that feel a little suggestive. But if you pay attention, you'll see that her investment peaks when she's in control, when she decides when and how you connect. A woman who's just passing time will often give you emotional highs without ever allowing you into her real life. She'll keep conversations light, avoid deeper vulnerability, and rarely make concrete plans in advance. Everything remains fluid, always, "Let's see," instead of "let's meet." She's available when she wants to be, absent when you need her. And here's the subtle part. Sometimes she'll even mirror genuine interest when she senses you pulling away. Suddenly, she's more affectionate, more engaging, more present. Not because she's ready to commit, but because she's responding to the loss of attention, not the loss of you. There's a difference. This is where self-awareness becomes your armor. When you know your own value, you stop interpreting temporary closeness as proof of lasting interest. You learn to measure consistency over intensity. Anyone can burn bright for a weekend, The question is, does she still show up when the excitement fades? One way to test this, without games, without manipulation, is to gently shift the balance. Stop being the constant initiator. Let the conversations breathe. If she's truly interested, she'll feel that space and move toward you. If she's just using your presence to fill her own void, she'll let the connection with her. And you'll have your answer without a single confrontation. But the reason most men don't do this isn't because they don't see the signs. It's because they don't want the truth confirmed. They'd rather keep the illusion alive than face the quiet grief of realizing she was never really invested. And that's the paradox. The more you fear losing her, the more likely you are to lose yourself. So here's where the work shifts from her behavior to yours. You have to be willing to walk away from maybe, because maybe is a slow leak in your confidence. It doesn't explode and ruin you overnight. It just drains you in the background until one day you wake up and realize you've been negotiating with your own worth for months. There's something almost intoxicating about words. They give us stories to hold on to. They paint futures we start to believe in, and they wrap us in the comfort of maybe. But words on their own can be the most misleading thing in a relationship. A woman can tell you she cares. She can tell you she misses you. She can say all the right things in all the right tones. And yet, if you watch closely, you might see the smallest fracture between what she says and how she moves through the world with you in it. It's in the way her voice lifts when she's making plans with her friends, but softens into vague uncertainty when you try to confirm your next date. It's in the way her hand lingers on your arm in public, but she hesitates to introduce you to people who matter in her life. Body language, more than any text or call, will tell you what's real. When she's genuinely drawn to you, there's a certain openness. Her body leans toward yours even when you're not speaking. Her eyes seek you out in a room without her realizing it. She mirrors your movements, a subconscious alignment that happens when two people are in sync. But when she's lukewarm, her body tells a different story. She might angle herself slightly away during conversations, keep subtle barriers like crossed arms or a bag between you, or create just enough physical distance to keep intimacy at bay. None of this is about reading one single sign. It's about observing the pattern over time. And then there's silence, not the comfortable kind, where two people can share space without words and still feel connected. I'm talking about the kind of silence that feels like absence. The delayed replies that stretch into days. The messages that don't get acknowledged at all. Silence, for many men, is the hardest truth to face because it forces you to recognize where you stand without her ever having to say it. We often fill those silences with our own explanations. She's busy, she's tired, she's going through something. And maybe those things are true. But if you're important to her, you won't live in that silence for long. Even her choice of words, when she does speak, holds clues. A woman who's invested will talk in specifics. Let's have dinner on Thursday. I want you to meet my friend Sarah. I'm thinking about you before my meeting. There's a rootedness to her language, a sense that she's weaving you into the fabric of her life. A woman who's just keeping you on the periphery will talk in generalities. We should hang out sometime. We'll see. I'll let you know. Her language leaves room for escape, because she's not ready, or not willing, to anchor you into her world. And here's where many men misstep. They take this vagueness as a challenge to prove themselves worthy of more concrete answers. They try harder, call more, plan bigger gestures. But if someone's interest is genuine, you don't need to earn clarity. It's given freely. I once worked with a man who told me he had been seeing a woman for almost a year, but still hadn't met a single person from her life. No friends, no family, no colleagues. Every time he brought it up, she said, I just like to keep my relationships private. On the surface, it sounded reasonable, but in practice, it meant she could enjoy the connection without integrating it into her reality. And for him, it was a slow erosion of trust. When a woman is truly interested, she'll want to fold you into her world. Not immediately, not recklessly, but steadily. You'll become part of her stories, her routines, her social circle. If she's keeping you in a separate box, away from the rest of her life, that's not privacy, that's compartmentalization. The deeper truth here is that clarity often doesn't come from looking at her actions in isolation. It comes from comparing her actions toward you with how she behaves in other areas of her life. Is she capable of making time for the things she values? Does she follow through on commitments with friends, work, or personal goals? If she can do it there but not with you, the message is already written. And I want to say this without judgment. Sometimes the reason she's not giving more isn't because she's cruel, but because she's not ready. Maybe she's still tangled in past heartbreak. Maybe she's unsure of what she wants. But the reason doesn't change the reality. If she's not showing up for you now, you have to decide how long you're willing to stand in the waiting room of her life. That decision, to stay, to step back, or to walk away, is where your self-respect becomes your compass. Because when you know your own worth, you don't beg for attention. You don't barter your time for scraps of affection. You hold yourself to the quiet standard that the right connection won't require you to keep proving why you should be chosen. So read the spaces between her words. Watch the moments when her energy shifts. Pay attention to where you're placed in her life's hierarchy. Because love, real love, doesn't just invite you in, it makes room for you to stay. One of the hardest truths to accept about relationships, especially when you're in that foggy space between hope and reality, is that sometimes it's not her keeping you there, it's you. Men often imagine they're caught in someone else's game, but more often than not, the game is happening in their own head, and it's fueled by three powerful traps: the sunk cost fallacy, the fantasy gap, and the ego tether. The sunk cost fallacy is that little voice that says, "I've already invested too much to walk away now." You remember every dinner, every late-at-night phone call, every vulnerable thing you shared, and you tell yourself it has to add up to something. You feel like leaving now would mean it was all for nothing. But here's the thing. If your investment isn't producing a return, pouring more into it won't suddenly change the outcome. It's like throwing water into a bucket with a hole. The more you give, the more you lose, and the hole doesn't get smaller. Then there's the fantasy gap. This is the distance between who she really is with you and the version of her you've created in your mind. In your mind, she's the woman who's going to wake up one day and realize you were the one all along. In reality, she's the woman who's been showing you, in small but consistent ways, that she's not choosing you now. We cling to that imagined version because it's softer than facing the truth. And finally, the ego tether. This is where your self-worth becomes entangled with her validation. You start measuring your desirability, your masculinity, even your value as a partner by whether she chooses you or not. So the idea of letting her go feels less like losing a connection and more like losing a piece of your identity. These traps are powerful because they feed off your deepest fears: fear of wasting time, fear of not being enough, fear of rejection. And the longer you stay in them, the more you start bending yourself to fit her availability, her mood, her pace. You stop asking if this is what you want and focus only on how to keep her interested. But here's where the real shift happens. The moment you recognize that your value doesn't increase or decrease based on her response, you begin to reclaim your power. And reclaiming your power isn't about becoming cold or playing games. It's about coming back into alignment with yourself. The first step is brutal honesty, not with her, but with yourself. Write down what you're actually getting from this connection, not what you hope to get, not what you think could happen, but what's happening right now. Look at it without romantic filters. If what you see doesn't nourish you, you have to ask, why am I still here? The second step is to set boundaries that aren't negotiable. If you know you don't want to be in a situationship, stop accepting one. If you need consistent communication to feel secure, stop rationalizing long stretches of silence. Boundaries aren't demands you place on someone else. They're standards you hold for yourself. They say, this is the minimum I need to remain here. And then comes the hardest part, detaching without bitterness. Detachment isn't cutting someone off in anger. It's creating enough emotional space to see the situation clearly. You stop chasing. You stop over-explaining your worth. You stop trying to perform your way into her decision. You give her the opportunity to step forward. And if she doesn't, you walk away with your dignity intact. I know this is easier said than done, because part of you still hopes she'll notice the space you've created and rush to fill it. And sometimes she will, but you have to understand the difference between someone coming toward you because they miss you and someone coming toward you because they miss what you give them. If all they miss is the attention, the comfort, the convenience, nothing will change. Reclaiming your power also means reconnecting with parts of your life that don't revolve around her. Go back to the hobbies, friendships, and goals that made you feel alive before she entered the picture. The more you feed your own life, the less you look to her to feed your sense of self. And here's something I've seen again and again. The moment a man shifts his focus back to himself, the dynamic changes. Sometimes the woman who was lukewarm suddenly leans in, sensing the shift. Other times, she fades away completely. Both outcomes are a gift, because either you get a more present partner, or you get the freedom to find one. What you cannot afford to do is linger in the gray zone forever. Because the gray zone doesn't just rob you of time. It rewires your expectations for love. It teaches you to accept inconsistency as normal, to confuse anxiety with excitement, and to measure intimacy by how much you're willing to overlook. A healthy connection doesn't require you to live in constant analysis. You don't have to decode every text, wonder about every delay, or question every word. You don't have to be half in, half out, constantly adjusting yourself to hold her attention. You get to be all the way in or all the way free. So ask yourself now, if nothing changes from this point forward, if she never steps up, never offers more, would you still want this? And if the answer is no, then the decision is already made. You're just waiting to give yourself permission to act on it. By now, you've likely noticed something. The signs of real interest aren't mysterious at all. They're not hidden in coded text messages or buried inside vague promises. They're right in front of you, living in the rhythm of how she shows up or doesn't. The challenge isn't in spotting them, it's in believing them. And believing them means letting go of the comfort that comes with uncertainty, because uncertainty can feel safer than rejection. It keeps hope alive without forcing you to face the possibility that the hope is misplaced. But here's the truth: living in uncertainty is not safer, it's slower heartbreak. It keeps you tethered to something that might never exist, while life and love are quietly passing you by. Real interest, when it's there, feels almost unremarkable, and that's what makes it so extraordinary. There's no constant questioning, no replaying conversations in your head, looking for clues. When a woman is genuinely invested, she makes her presence known without you having to chase it. She follows up. She initiates. She remembers the details you've shared. She weaves you into her life without you having to ask. She makes time, not because her schedule is magically empty, but because you matter enough to create space. You're not an afterthought, you're part of the plan. And that doesn't mean every moment is grand or dramatic. Often, it's in the small consistencies that interest reveals itself. The text that says she's thinking of you before a big meeting, the quick call just to hear your voice, the casual, I saw this and thought of you. But here's the part many men struggle with. You can only recognize that kind of interest when you've decided that you will not accept less. Because if you haven't drawn that line for yourself, you'll keep justifying every crumb as if it's a meal. Clarity is an act of self-respect. It says, if you want to be in my life, I will meet you with the same energy you give me, but I will not carry both of us. And sometimes clarity means walking away from someone who is good, kind, and beautiful, but not right for you. That's hard because we want to believe that good should be enough. But compatibility isn't about how good someone is, it's about how much they're willing and able to give in the way you need. So what do you do when you realize she's not truly interested? You leave with grace. You don't punish her, shame her, or try to make her see what she's losing. You simply remove yourself from the space where your presence is undervalued. Not as a power move, not as revenge, but as a quiet affirmation that your energy is sacred. Leaving gracefully isn't about her. It's about you. It's the decision to close the chapter without burning the book. To say in action, if not in words, I care enough about myself to not stay where my heart is unsure. And here's the paradox: the men who learn to live with grace often find it easier to love deeply in the future. Because they're not carrying resentment, not building walls out of old disappointments. They've learned that walking away from the wrong energy isn't the end of love. It's the clearing of space for the right one. This is where the conversation shifts from her interest to your readiness. Are you willing to show up fully for someone who meets you halfway? Because sometimes after spending so much time in half-hearted connections, full reciprocity can feel foreign. You might be tempted to question it, to wait for the other shoe to drop. That's why clarity doesn't just protect you from wasted time. It prepares you for real intimacy. And intimacy, the kind worth keeping, thrives on mutual investment. Not equal in every moment. Relationships ebb and flow, but balanced over time. There will be days when she gives more and days when you do. But the current always moves in both directions. The final piece is this: don't measure her interest by how much she wants you when you're pulling away. Measure it by how she shows up when she has you. Anyone can fight for something they're losing. The question is, do they nurture it when it's already theirs? So as you move forward, hold this standard for yourself. If it's real, it won't feel like guessing. If it's mutual, you won't have to earn your place. If it's worth your time, it will give you back more than it takes. Let that be the filter through which every connection passes. Because once you've experienced the peace of being with someone who's all in, you'll never mistake mixed signals for romance again. You'll see them for what they are: a distraction from the life and love you actually deserve. And when you know that, really know it, you won't waste another season waiting for someone to decide if you're worth the leap. You'll already be on your way toward the person who doesn't need convincing. Because the right woman won't just meet you where you are. She'll meet you there, take your hand, and walk forward with you without hesitation.